It's not what you learn, or not just what you learn, but who you learn it from. I grew up around mechanics. My stepdad was an aircraft mechanic in the military and the Army for many, many years, pretty much retired from that position. He used to tell a story about flying over Vietnam, and their UH-60 Black Hawk was shot down. Just took small rounds fire. It wasn't like a massive explosion or anything, but it crippled the aircraft, and they were able to get it down in the bush and in a place where it could actually land and take off again. The only problem was it had a hole in the hydraulic system and had lost probably 50% of the fluid in the vehicle, and so the aircraft wouldn't fly anymore. It couldn't control its own blade tilt and all that kind of stuff. But it happened to have on board a 50-gallon drum of olive oil. It was one of the things they were transporting. And he fashioned a way for the pump of the hydraulic system to suck olive oil out of this 50-gallon drum and into the system and get the aircraft back up in the air and back to base. Not just a parts changing kind of mechanic, but if there's a way to make it happen again, make it work again, even if it doesn't seem like that's what the book would instruct, he's going to make it work again. I also have an uncle who, last time I talked to him, he was telling me how to change out some pretty technical parts in my truck while he was putting horseshoes on his miniature horses. But he spent most of his years as a trainer for GM Goodwrench. So he's the kind of guy that when you call him and tell him what kind of car it is, he can tell you the 15 unique differences between that car and every other car that has the same kind of part. It's pretty fascinating to listen to. And then I had another uncle who just used to spend most of his time building and rebuilding race cars. I don't know that any of those were by the book, but all of them were fast and all of them were loud. And his son has taken up that legacy and actually builds race cars down in Central Texas around the Texas A&M area. I didn't get all of those genes. I have a pretty good mechanical aptitude, but I don't like working on cars as much as some people do. I can, and I will when it saves me a lot of money, but generally speaking, it's not something I get up in the morning and go, yay, I get to work on a car again. And yet, over the last few weeks, I have had my mechanic's manicure as I've replaced more than $500 worth of parts under the hood of my own Suburban to keep it going on the road. Yes, it's 15 years old now, almost 300,000 miles on it. Still rides good, still runs good when it's running right, and still gets almost 15 miles to the gallon, which is not bad for a giant SUV. My son's car is even older than that. In fact, it's older than he is by a couple of years. But I believe in allowing people to learn as they go. My older son, we've talked about before in the saga with trying to get the stupid check engine light off to pass inspection, and how he spent several $100s replacing various parts to find out it was a $6 hose that he couldn't find that was causing the problem. Well, my younger son is pretty intuitive, pretty mechanically inclined as well, likes to do his own work. He actually enjoys being under the hood of a car for whatever reason. And recently his tensioner belt pulley went bad, so he replaced the tensioner pulley with the help of his girlfriend's dad. And then 2 nights ago, his car left him stranded and was dumping water out from underneath it. And come to find out it's the water pump. So Mom and I arranged to pay for his water pump, and he picked it up at AutoZone, and he got to work. And before I got there, he had it off, had it back on, had the belt on, had it running, had it driving. I was pretty impressed. You know, he pulled up a couple of YouTube videos that were not just how to replace a water pump or what a cooling system does, but he pulled up some videos that were specific enough to tell him which 5 bolts to take off and which 4 to take off in what order, and how to take them off when and where to put the new part. It was very detailed stuff. It's a good video. And it was specific to his motor. So when he took the pieces and the parts off, they looked exactly the same. And he knew he was doing the right thing, not just doing a thing. Now, unfortunately, there are a couple of little insights and tips and tricks that come along with having done those things many times that your typical parts changer may not point out to you, or in this particular case, because I watched the same video beginning to end after he found it to make sure that I agreed with the advice that it was giving, etc. And one of the things he was very specific about in replacing the water pump is you've got to scrape off all the old gasket, but you've got to make sure you don't nick the metal because it's an aluminum block. So there's a delicate balance between scraping hard to get off all the glue and the old gasket and all that stuff, and not scraping the metal and leaving a scar in it, which will then cause another leak. Well, sure enough, by the time I get there to help him bleed the lines, he's got water running from under the bottom of the brand new water pump. And so we went to the store and bought a new one before the parts store closed, and bought a new gasket, just a gasket and the sealing glue. And we began the process of taking the water pump off again. And as we get it off, I said, you know, that old gasket, or the new gasket, has only been on there for a little while. It hasn't had the temperature high enough on the engine yet to really seal it on both sides, because you haven't let it run for, 30 or 40 minutes. So we may be able to just pull that off with the water pump and find out why it's leaking, and then maybe put it all back together. Well, I pull the water pump off, and he grabs the gasket and starts to pull it off, and there are several places where it's literally just hanging off, like it never had any seal at all, and then a couple of places where it's stuck real good, and when he pulls it, he rips the gasket in half. So we bought a new one to put back on there. But when we did that, we realized that the gasket that came with the water pump and the new one that we bought were blue. What was stuck on the engine block was black. And I said, buddy, where do you think that black stuff came from? He goes, oh, that's the old gasket. And I said, do you remember in the very first video that you watched how he said that's got to be shiny, smooth metal? Now, this seems like a really minor detail. And one of the challenges that we have today is that everybody wants a shortcut. Everybody wants it to be done quickly. Everybody wants to be finished with this and moving on to the next thing. We have a world that operates with ADD as its MO. Yeah, I know that's a whole lot of letters. ADMO. Their modus operandi, the way that they operate, is with a deficit to attention. Now, the ADD, attention deficit disorder, is that it? Attention deficit disorder, yeah, ADD, I think is also a sad cry when we realize that it means usually a deficiency in attention to detail as well. Now, I know that there are chemicals in the brain that cause the ability or inability to focus to be out of balance, and that there are certain medications that can change that. I also know that there are a lot of people who are diagnosed with ADD who don't really have ADD. They have laseyitis, and they have the even worse in our culture. They have a worse syndrome, and that is boyism. They're just boys. They want to be moving. They want to be going. They want to be doing. My son will watch the YouTube video that's 6 or 7 minutes long to learn how to change the part, even if it takes an hour to change the part. He's okay with learning from somebody else, but then he wants to get busy and do it. He wants to put his hands on it. He wants to get greasy. He wants to turn the wrenches and turn the bolts and scratch up his knuckles. And I got no problem with that. I got no problem with him doing the work and learning the process and understanding the pieces and the parts and how they work. And we got no problem with that at all. In fact, I highly encourage it. If you don't have a whole lot of money to be spending on mechanics and other people working on your car, learn how to work on yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. And there may be a day that you're the only person who can. But I also realized that the rush to get it done meant taking shortcuts. He had a friend come and help him put it all back together. His friend's his same age. His friend has never put a water pump on before. His friend doesn't know what it's like to take it off and put it on and take it off and put it on and take it off and put it on. And I do. I put the clutch in my 67 Chevy Impala 4 times in the same week. Twice I had to buy new ones. The first time because I didn't put it in straight and the pilot bearing never engaged. And so when you would push the clutch or let off, nothing happened. It was always in gear. And that destroyed the clutch, obviously, because I tried to crank the car with it and it was grinding against the clutch plate. And yeah, not a good thing. But you learn those things as you go. You learn that process unless you have someone like I now call him my uncle, even though he's significantly older than I am. I'll call him and say, hey, I'm working on this. What are your thoughts? And he has all kinds of warning bells going off in his head about, well, don't do that. I know that several people will tell you to do that first, but let me just tell you, there's a shortcut to figure that out before you do it. And rather than just changing expensive parts, let's test every one of them first and make sure that's not the problem before we go to the next thing. Very logical to have someone like that in your corner, because two people of the same age who've never experienced that thing, not the greatest advice. You know what I'm saying? But we find ourselves in a society today where young people are taking their cues from media. And I don't just mean the news media. I mean from YouTube, from podcasts, from whatever they can get their hands on. That could be anything from a video game to a how-to video to just some genius. I watched a guy last night changing a thermostat because I think that's probably the next step for my son. Watching him change a thermostat, and he took everything apart. Generally speaking, a thermostat takes a couple of bolts, and if it's in a really complicated place, you may have to move a couple of things, but this guy had 40 or 50 bolts out of the process, and large pieces moved to get to the thermostat housing, which he then removed the thermostat housing from all of the hoses and all of the lines and all of the connections, and took the entire assembly off the vehicle before removing the thermostat from it. And I'm like, you know, those two bolts right there would have allowed you to move that maybe 4 tops to get the thermostat out of there. But that's what happens when we don't have a mentor. When we try to move through life, figuring it out on our own as we go, we will learn some lessons. And we will learn some lessons the hard way. I don't care if you're talking about a tutor for your math class, someone who speaks the foreign language you're trying to learn as their first language, a science project that maybe you're just trying to discover as an experiment. But there are things in each of those elements, just like there is auto mechanics, just like there is writing, just like there is communication. There are things in those processes that are shortcuts. And that's what a mentor is for. A mentor is to be that person who stands on the other side of the minefield and says, I've been there, hang on, I wouldn't step right there. Take a half step left, then come forward. It's not to stop your progress. It's not to slow you down. It's not to cause you to detour. The purpose of a mentor is to say, I've done that before. And I can tell you there's some major pitfalls in it. There's some huge mistakes that can be made because I made them. You can waste a lot of time and money trying to do it that way. Now, in the end, the new water pump gasket and the razor blade scraper to get the old gasket off the block solved the problem, and it was less than $6. Yay! But I drove an hour and a half round trip, got home about midnight, and I went thinking I was just going to help him bleed the line, so I stayed in my dress clothes. And by the time I got done, I was sweated all the way through till my socks were dripping. And we spent about 4 hours under the hood, taking off the new water pump, removing the new and the old gasket, replacing the new gasket with the newer gasket, scraping the block, testing it, and then bleeding the lines. And a lot of that could have been avoided if a mentor rather than a peer had been there as the advisor to say, I wouldn't put that back on yet until you've scraped that a little better. That one word of advice would have saved 3 or 4 hours worth of time and taking the pump back off again, which is a lot of labor. What one thing do you have in your life, one process that you keep going through, one lesson that you keep learning or keep butting your head against and you're not quite learning it yet? What one thing do you keep doing again and again? And you just need a mentor one time to go, hang on, what if we just tweak this? Just one little tweak. Some people call them hacks. Here's what I found. I found that attitude is one of those things that, well, life is 90% attitude. A lot of things are going to happen to you through the course of your life. People are going to hurt you. People are going to make you mad. People are going to take advantage of you. People are going to lie to you. People are going to steal from you. It's life. It's filled with humans. They do stupid stuff like that. That doesn't mean they're all bad people. But as you're learning those lessons about who to keep in a relationship and who you should move off and who should be more guarded around, and how do you manage your own attitude through all those circumstances? Well, if your attitude is out of control, and remember, attitude is formulaic, it is your thoughts plus your feelings. So it's what you think about how you feel, it's how you feel about what you think. Both of those are your attitude. Formulaic means it's like a math problem. So if 2 plus 3 equals 5, then 3 plus 2 equals 5, and 5 minus 3 equals 2, and 5 minus 2 equals 3. And so if you want to adjust your attitude, change the things that you think or the way that you feel about the things that you think, and you'll change your attitude. Life is 90% attitude. If you can't get your attitude under control, or you don't know how to get your attitude under control, then there are going to be lessons in life that you're going to learn again and again and again and again. Certain tests that you'll have to pass, and you'll probably have to take the test more than once until you pass it. Because those little shortcuts, like, hey, finish scraping the rest of that gasket off there before you put the new one on, are lessons that are only learned by experience. Having that experience over your shoulder, that's probably not the right attitude for this moment. You need to just cool your jets a little bit. You need to get a hold of your own emotions. You need to think through what you're going to say. There have been a whole lot of things in our society over the last decade, major public known events that have taken place, where lives have been lost, where people have been injured, where property has been damaged. And attitude was the key culprit. Well, when you realize that we have a generation of people, a generation of young people, and even some young adults now. The millennials are, if I remember right, from 18 to 34. So there are some of them just getting out of high school or just about to get out of high school, and some they're already parents of elementary age students. And so in that swath of people, we have a heightened sense of emotion, a heightened sense of right, a heightened sense of self-purpose, a heightened sense of awareness, but not necessarily self-awareness, even though that's what many people see it as. They believe that they are more aware of themselves, but what they really are is self-focused. And as a result of that, attitude comes up pretty quickly. They have a thought, it instantly comes with a feeling, that thought, that feeling become an attitude, and they operate within that attitude. Don't I have a right to be happy? Don't I have a right to get my way? Don't I have a right to... And so that attitude of entitlement, as an example, drives their behavior in the way they drive behind the wheel. It drives their behavior in the way that they deal with a customer. It drives their behavior in the way they deal with their boss. It drives their behavior in the way they deal with coworkers. It's why many young people today, and people in that millennial gap, are more inclined to be self-employed than to go to work for someone else. Now, there is a shift, there's a paradigm shift in our society where there are many jobs where the human's being replaced by technology. And I don't necessarily mean by robots, while that's probably coming. What I do mean is that there are a whole lot of jobs that used to take 5 or 6 people to do that technology has made so much more efficient that 1 or 2 people can do the same work of 5 or 6 and do it more productively, do it less expensively, do it more efficiently. And that's fine. But then there are those jobs that many people look at, like manufacturing, and they just say, I don't really want a job in manufacturing. I don't really want to be an auto mechanic. I don't really want to. I want to paint and make a living at that. Okay, well, are you good? No, but that's not the point. Don't I have a right to paint if that's what I want to do? Well, you have the right to. but you don't have the right to demand that anybody buys it. And if nobody buys it, you're going to be broke. Have all the fun you want painting and being broke, but no one owes you a living if you choose a vocation that matches your hopes and dreams but doesn't match anybody else's wants or needs. And so most of us work in a job and have our hobbies on the side. There are many young people who want their hobby to be their vocation. And because there are those who have made great gains in YouTube and online videos and gaming and things of that nature, young people today feel like I have an even chance to do that. And if I don't make it in the NFL, maybe I'll make it on YouTube. If I don't make my millions writing books, maybe I'll make my millions painting pictures. Maybe I'll just travel around the world, take travel photography, and I'll charge people to buy my travel photography so I can continue to travel. Well, there are a lot of people who like to go on vacation that don't have the opportunity to do it, who are not going to buy your photos of vacation so that you can continue to go on vacation. I'm just saying. But there are those who make lots and lots of money who would love to buy your pictures of Brazil because they've never been there. Being able to discern where our attitude is leading us down a path that's going to squelch our future is a big, big deal. Being able to understand the words that are coming out of our mouth and those around us so that we can understand the value of our attitude, the impact of our attitude, and to have that one person looking over our shoulder going, hang on, you might want to, before you move on to, is a very powerful thing. Having a mentor in your life in the areas of attitude, in the areas of leadership, having a mentor who's willing to stand up to you and go, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not trying to invalidate your ideas or your point or your person, but I'm going to tell you you're wrong. Do you know how seldom that happens today? Very few people are willing to stand up and just simply say you're wrong. I'm not trying to tell you you can't feel that way. You're welcome to feel that way. But you're choosing the wrong answer and feeling badly because of it. Why don't you try choosing the right answer and adjust your feelings to the facts? It's powerful, powerful stuff. Now, it is possible to manipulate a lot of things in life just by attitude. It really is. You can manipulate a lot of relationships. You can manipulate a lot of circumstances. There are many, many people. In fact, there's a book by Laurel Langmeyer called Yes Power. I think it's called Yes Power. In the entire book, what she's talking about is the idea of any challenge that comes at you, any business opportunity, any career opportunity, any chance to move on. Yes, energy, that's the name of it. She says, I want you to look at every challenge and every obstacle that stands up in front of you and simply say, yes, I can overcome that. Even if it's a business proposition and a customer says, I want you to do this for me, and you've never done it before, you have no idea how to do it. Having a yes attitude, I will figure it out. I will take your money. I don't know how to do it. I was talking to a guy on the phone the other day. On the phone, he says, when I started moving more into my business, I had a client who asked me to do it all for him. And normally, I train people to do this type of thing. And he said, I don't want to do it myself. I don't want to hire a team of people to do it. You obviously know how to do it. Why don't you just do it for me rather than selling me the package and the learning materials? And he said, I honestly had never been asked that before. A turnkey, done-for-you project, I'd never done it before. But I knew all the steps, and I knew how much time it was going to take away from my clients and how much time it was going to take away from my own business and my own driving revenue. And so I just threw a number at him. And it was a large number, 3 or 4 times what I'd ever sold that package for. And he didn't bat an eye. He said, great, done. Send me a contract. Because for the customer, it was a big enough project to make it worth paying that kind of money for. And for the provider, having never done it before, his attitude to say, yes, and I'll figure it out, was great enough to 4x his income in a single decision. Now, if you haven't learned to manage your attitude, you might have felt fear right there. Oh my gosh, I've never done that before. No one's ever asked me to do that before. I don't know how to do that before. How does that even work? What are the steps? What's the process? I don't even have a contract for it. What would the price be? And so fear just comes in and you're like, I've never done that. I don't know what to do. And you freeze and you do nothing. And the opportunity passes. And it's all about attitude. But having a mentor or a coach there to look over your shoulder and say, hang on, before we move forward, why don't we? Is a powerful, powerful thing in attitude and leadership, in marriage, in education. That's why we have tutors. It's why we have additional classes, remedial classes, advanced classes. Not everybody learns at the same pace. Some need summer school. Some are going to summer school to get their next year information already done. A young girl who goes to school, the same grade as my son, is working on her senior year next year, but she's already working on summer classes at the college so that next year when she graduates, she'll also already have her associate's degree. She's halfway through with her college. She's not even out of high school yet. That's a pretty powerful opportunity. It's about your learning. It's about your access. It's about your mentors. It's about your opportunities to take advantage when opportunities come. And that all goes back to attitude. So who's your mentor? Who is it that you listen to who coaches you on attitude, who coaches you on leadership? Who's investing in you to say, hang on, before you do that, let's do this. Because it's going to make your results even better in the end. And if the answer is, I don't have one, well, then get one. One of the things that I love doing, and from 2010 till about 2016, so about 5 or 6 years, and I think I'm probably going to have to get back into it because it's a real missing spot in my things that I do. I had an opportunity to mentor at a public high school with about 2,500 students. And in that mentoring, we were actually assigned a class. We would work with the same teacher and work with the same group of students every Tuesday once or twice a month. And those Tuesdays, we would go in and meet with the students and walk through just things of life. And in 2012, they actually took the program, Live a More Excellent Life, which was my leadership coaching program for personal development, it's not executive leadership. It's about looking at life through a different lens than you're looking at life now. Having grown up in a fairly unpleasant childhood, some of the circumstances that I lived through and the stupid mistakes that I made and the relationship issues that I had are a great learning lesson for other people who are in the same circumstance. But it's about self-leadership. It's about learning how to take responsibility. And so the school that I was mentoring in actually purchased that program so that it was available as an assembly program. Then it was available as a 9-month mentoring program, and all of the students had access to go through it. The school had all the materials, all the handouts, audio files, worksheets, the whole thing. And this public high school with 2,500 students walked through that mentorship program for 9 months with over 300 mentors in the classrooms and working with the teachers. The impact that can be had in a group that size when everybody's working on attitude at the same time, when everybody's talking about their vision for the future at the same time, it creates a lot of momentum. It creates a lot of buzz. And so I was just one mentor in one classroom with one teacher and 25 or 30 students, but there were 300 other mentors on the campus equipped with the same material who were teaching the same stuff to all 2,500 students. It creates quite a buzz. That doesn't have to be in such a large scale. It can be a small group of 10 or 20. It can be one-on-one as a leadership coach, working through the things that are challenging in your life. But trying to do it all on your own is about the same as my son in his YouTube video. Yeah, he made huge progress, having never changed a water pump before in his life. He's 18 years old. This is his first car. But he took that water pump off with the confidence that he was going to be able to put it back together. And he did. He took it apart, he put it back together. He made one small mistake that a mentor would have changed. Hang on, before you do that, let's do this. I was listening to an interview yesterday with Lily Singh, I think is her name. She was on the show with Mr. Lowe. And in the interview, she said, you know, I'm probably the only person who actually converted my crush to almost stalking, and now he's my mentor. And her biggest supporter in her life is a guy by the name of Dwayne Johnson, otherwise known as The Rock. And all the way back to her high school days, she has idolized and admired The Rock. And as time has gone on, and he's gone from the NFL to the WWE to acting in TV shows to movies, and his career has continued to skyrocket. She said, you know, the thing that I like about him the most is that he's just genuinely a nice guy. But there are a lot of things about my brand, about my business, about the way that I do things. And she was just recently recognized by Forbes magazine as the #1 influencer in the world. Lily Singh, look her up. But she said, when I sit down with Dwayne, he always looks at my problems and says, we. As my mentor, nothing is my problem. Everything is our problem. We work together to solve those problems. Now, most of us couldn't afford somebody like Tony Robbins to sit there and look over our shoulder on a regular basis, or most of us couldn't afford to have The Rock sit there with us and look at our branding and our messaging and our business and our physical fitness and walk through those things with us one-on-one. But there are enough people out there who, for a much smaller fee, will take the time to look at your project and look over your project, or look at the decisions that you've made in your life in the last year, or the last 5 years, the last 10 years, and help you to identify, I wouldn't have done it like that. Let's redo that and maybe do this first instead of that. Loren Midgley is a good friend of mine. She has recently published her 3rd book, I think, since we met. The 3rd one since we met. She has a bestseller already. Her speaking career has taken off. And she's got kids in college. She's got relationships of her own. She's got life of her own. She's had battles of her own personally. And yet her business is continuing to grow. And when I asked her what's the difference, she said, you know, and we both have a friend and coach, James Malinchak. In fact, I'll be with James in December. I'm taking my wife to spend a day with him in the coaching program. And she said, I followed everything James told me to do. And every time he told me to tweak this, to change that, to move this, he was right. It was hard to hear because some of it I was really invested in, but he was right, and it has really made a difference in my career. For every need, there is someone who is a good coach or a good mentor. There are 11,000 of us John Maxwell coaches now, literally all over the world. And I don't know one who's not willing to pour into you. I don't know a John Maxwell coach who wouldn't sit down and answer your questions. We're all going to charge you something because we have to pay the bills and keep the lights on. But we're willing to help. We're glad to help. High school students, business managers. Jim Gardner is a good friend of mine. Jim Gardner is a John Maxwell coach as well. Jim Gardner focuses on small businesses with 6 to 10 employees, helping them achieve a level of excellence in their standards. Elite performers. Doctor's office, dentist's office, chiropractor's offices. He's got a few small manufacturing offices and franchises that have 5 or 6 businesses. But he works with the top level CEOs and operations managers in those companies, and then works one-on-one with several of the individual employees to improve their standard of living, their quality of life, and things of that nature. When customers experience the joy of your employees because your employees have the right attitude, because your employees have a good outlook, your business grows. Investing in your people isn't just a paycheck. It's not just vacation days. It's not just benefits. It's improving the quality of life in the people who work for you. Wait, I wouldn't do it like that. Let's do this first, and then we'll do that. It's a powerful phrase, and it's necessary for all of us to hear from time to time. Hang on. Before you do that, let's do this. Those are the words of a mentor who can change your life, and it's not just what you learn. It's who you learn it from. Anybody can unscrew the bolts and take off a water pump. Anybody with a modicum of dexterity. But not everyone can diagnose the problem to know that it's the water pump before you replace it. Not everyone can remind you to scrape the gasket before you put it back on. And I'll promise you there's some area in your life, in your business, in your customer service, in your product set, in your attitude, where it's just one word from a mentor. Hang on, before you do that, let's do this. Could change the results that you've been striving for so long. and instantly cause exponential results on the back end. Take some time and find a mentor in that area that you're struggling in. If it's leadership, communication skills, attitude, developing the vision for your life, send me a private message. We'll schedule some time to sit down and talk. I would love to help you. If you have a specific need and you're looking for a specific kind of mentor, send me a private message. Like I said, I'm connected to 11,000 John Maxwell coaches, and they are in all walks of life and in all countries and in all language bases. And we can put someone in your path to help you get your life moving the way you want to. It's not just what you learn, it's who you learn it from. Take some time to find a mentor and ask those tough questions of yourself today. What have I been doing over and over again that if I had a mentor, I probably would have only done once? I'm J Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on YouTube or Facebook, whichever way you prefer to watch. You can also get all of these videos on podcast, on iTunes podcast. And Tell It Like It Is.tv is being created as we speak, with all of the videos from this program, from Meet the Messenger, which is an interview program I do, from Transforming Grace, which is an interview program my wife and I do as marriage mentors, working with people who are dealing with crisis addictions in their marriage. With Clean Hearts, which is a training program for men to purify their hearts and get their minds right. And we will be adding other video sources, other presenters, other mentors to the Tell It Like It Is.tv channel as well. Right now it's up, it's a base, but we've got a long way to go on that. If you have content that's positive, that's life-affirming, that's impactful, and you are looking for a platform for exposure, send me a private message about TellItLikeItIs.tv. Go check it out, TellItLikeItIs.tv, and see what you think about it. There will be some advertising base, but there's also a chance for you to simply load your own YouTube videos straight to it. We'll advertise the platform or promote the platform so that you'll have a place to have exposure for your media and your videos as well. I appreciate you being a part of my day, and I appreciate having the opportunity to be a part of yours. God bless.